This is the Change Physician, episode 203.
203. Episode 203. All right. Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Change Physician. This episode is 203 by Dr. Katie's computation.
Yeah.
Probably everybody else's computation as well. So for this particular episode, Melissa, I wanted to talk about something called the freedom gap.
Okay.
And I'm going to be kind of honest. I really try to remember where, if there's a specific quotation, I try to remember where I got it. And I don't remember if it's too cool. I'm sure I read it somewhere, but I can't remember exactly where I read it. But the freedom gap, very, very crucial for everyone to know, particularly crucial for physicians to know because of how we start off our lives, basically in a crap ton of debt. But the freedom gap is the difference between what you earn and what you spend.
Okay.
So the wider that you build that gap, the more freedom that you have. So if you are living paycheck to paycheck and there is no gap, you have virtually no freedom. You know, if something happens, if you lose that income stream, you are going to be underwater really, really quick. If even worse, although this happens to us during medical school, what you earn is significantly less than what you spend, what you're spending on school. Now we go into debt, and now you're in the hole. So that would be the prison hole. But the reason this becomes so important, and one of the reasons I really like it, is because it's so simple. People try to know this stuff. Well, what do I need to save? What do I need to do this? How much do I need to retire? All you need to do is build that gap up. And what's really awesome is, because you're looking at earn versus saving, or not even, if you're just looking between the difference what you save and what you earn, the difference of what you're not spending anymore, all you have to do is either increase your earnings while keeping your spending the same, or decrease your spending while keeping the earnings the same, or doing both of those.
Yeah.
And it's the thing I really like about it becomes universal, because it's both when you start your journey. So the bigger that gap is, the more that you're going to be able to put some money into an emergency fund, the more you're going to be able to front load all of your retirement funds. That's, but on the back end, like we've talked about, I can see it right on the horizon here, like literally on the horizon, and really actively kind of thinking about what kind of drawdown strategies would be. And there's all this stuff with like the 4% rule, which I think we talked about with Bill and Acacia Ketterly, who essentially retired when they were 39 or 38 years old, with these understandings. But people are like, well, what's the proper amount? Is it 3%? Is it 4%? Is it 2.5% or whatever? Honest to God, it's good to have a kind of an idea about those numbers, but it doesn't necessarily matter. Because if you don't want to run out of money in retirement, the gap is the same. If you are somehow making sure that what you spend doesn't exceed what you earn, however you're earning that money, you should not run out of money.
Yeah.
If the market goes up, market goes down, you still should not earn money. Your spending fluctuates though. And so what that really comes down to is make sure your fixed spending is the lowest possible denominator it can be. Fixed being, any sort of loan payments, the things that you are committed, that you have to actually spend money on, mortgage payments, student loan payments, any other sort of debt that you have. The lower those are, the more, the safer you're going to be.
Yep.
I'm just kind of thinking about arguments, because they're the whiz kids like Eric Tate and those guys will say, well, you want to actually use leverage because leverage is the path to mega wealth.
Yeah.
And if you are, I can understand that if you are a go-getter and enable. Yeah. I'm looking at you.
Want to spend more, but want to have more.
To me, it's like, I think that some of us, I'm just kind of lazy. Like the whole lazy man's way to riches kind of thing is, I don't want to have to be stressing about all this stuff all the time. And so leverage makes a lot of sense until it doesn't make any sense. All those people who were leveraged out at the beginning of 2007, buying all these houses and renting it everywhere and thought they were living the high life. That works really great until things crumble on you.
Mhm.
And again, that's not everybody. I know some very, very wealthy people, and a lot of super big businesses sort of built on this way of not being so concerned about that. But for the rest of us, if you don't like the stress and you don't need to fly a private plane or buy a private jet or need your chateau in 3 different continents, each one a chateau, you could do pretty just fine as you just mind that gap and look at what the freedom it is. Grow that gap, grow your freedom.
Yeah, it almost sounds like you want a mind freedom too, so that you don't have the stress of too much activity trying to create extra wealth, but keep it simple.
Yeah, and there's a mind, like I like the word mind freedom. Part of it is how cognitive energy that you're invested in this. If you absolutely love it and finance is your deal, and I kind of like numbers when it comes to that,
Mhm.
but I don't love them that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you could do stuff, and people, and I guess the other thing is, where do you want to spend your energy? Because the same way that there's like the freedom gap when it comes to money, there's a freedom gap when it comes to your brain.
Mhm.
If you're going to fill your brain up full of crap with a lot of nonsensical little decisions that you have to make every way, you're not going to be able to do good thinking. There's we're sort of transitioning to different kind of things, is the whole myth about Steve Jobs in his dress, how he wore like the black turtleneck and a pair of jeans every day.
Yeah.
And part of that was it decreased cognitive demand.
Yeah.
And I mean, people have told me, what are you talking about? That's so silly. I'm like, no, man, if you waste all your energy on making stupid, nonsensical decisions all the time, you can't actually do the good thinking. And if you want to be a lazy thinker, that's fine. But if you don't, make sure you're minding that gap, making sure you're using that energy in good fashion.
Yeah, I think I like the mind freedom of choosing what I wear. Just keep it real simple. My husband probably could attest to that. He puts more energy into what he puts on, and I'm very much like, okay, functional. All right, what's gonna work here? I think.
Well, so I'm mostly home, because I actually work from home and things, but and so I don't put it. I just put on a t-shirt or whatever. But that's sort of my dream, is to get to the point where I can wear the same thing every day. I mean, you can have the special outfit for whatever. You have to have a jacket because you're going to dinner. But holy moly, I'm just like, oh, if I could just find the perfect look, like this is what I need. I'm totally comfortable in all the time. That sounds like heaven. That really does sound like heaven.
Yeah, I mean, the question is it comfort? Is it functionality? Is it variety? I think people are driven by different things, for sure. But when you said the freedom gap, I looked up, and what do you know? There's an author, Tim Gratis. Ironically, gratis means free in Spanish. It says Tweaking Your Life to Financial Freedom. The Freedom Gap is the name of the book. There's only one rating on it, but it's obviously talking about liberating yourself with a change of mindset, but the multiplicative effects, accelerating your journey to financial freedom. So probably, it's hard to tell in its description what it's really talking about.
Well, I mean, it's an easy concept, so I'm sure
Yeah.
multiple people have different sort of variants of the same thing.
Sure.
But I just, the nice thing about it is, like, once you label it, and this is a whole nother topic because I was reading about this today, once you sort of define something, it creates a reality. And once you have defined it and now you can perceive it, now you become more aware on a constant basis. So
awareness. Awareness.
It's awareness. Like definition really allows you to perceive, and the more you can perceive, the more you're aware you are. And so it's just another little simple way to kind of reframe the way you think about this stuff.
Yeah.
And for me, because people, man, like, oh, I'm always shocked. Like some of the physician firms are like, oh, I have $10 million and I have this and that. Can I retire? And it's just like,
how much do you spend?
How much do you spend? I mean, that's all you need to know, really. Yeah. And then people again spend so much mental energy on trying to figure out, well, could I retire? Well, again, what is your spending? I mean, what do you spend? What are the fixed costs? So what's the minimum amount of money that you need to spend on needed to survive every year? That's sort of your baseline. That's the foundation. If you drop below that, obviously you're in trouble. You may be on the street. You can't, whatever, you lose everything. what's the maximal, or is infinite because you can theoretically spend everything. What's the optimal ratio? And this is where the whole, if you're tracking your spending comes in, what do you tend to spend every year? So that's your average. And then put a little buffer line in there. You know, okay, 10% over what our average spending is, or what our optimal level of spending is. And that's all you really need to know. But because the markets are going down right now and people are going, oh, what, I can't do this. Look at your spending. Whatever your if your fixed costs are low, you should be able to theoretically drop your spending.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the part I don't get. People shockingly, I don't have a super expensive lifestyle. I drive a car that is 16 years old. My wife drives a car that is 19 years old. We don't live in a 12-bedroom mansion. You know, we just talked about the clothes. I'm not buying, I don't even know what fancy clothes labels are. I don't care. So, but it provides a lot. I mean, that it provides me a sense of comfort to know that if things really got bad, we could always drop our spending. And the other nice thing for physicians is we have a cognitive field. Even if you're a surgeon and you're technical, there are so many options that you have with your brain, as long as you don't lose that, that if for some reason, you know, this gap narrows because a catastrophic thing occurs, you can always add a little income by doing something else.
Right.
It won't be the whatever your clinical salary is, but you could easily make, using your brain, as much as most average people make at their jobs. I mean, there's so many options for physicians. It's insane, as long as you just recognize that you're not going to get paid whatever ridiculous salary that we get in the clinical space.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you made this concept of the freedom gap. I always wonder, the lottery winners, the so-called lottery, when it comes to the contracts for some of these athletes, and how some of them just blow everything, and how badly they need an understanding of the freedom gap, or even if it's like a one-time, you know, lottery win. Like, conceptually, people don't get it. Like, if they could just foreshadow, if I keep doing this, where will this all go? It's not like it's coming out of a tree and regenerating. Like, it's so basic, but the things that drive that behavior without an understanding of expenses versus what's available, and those things, it always blows my mind when you're used to almost nothing, you get a ton of something, and you can't even think about, let's just shove like 50% of it, well, after you pay taxes or whatever, shove 50% of it away as if you didn't have it, and then construct your life with a reasonable lifestyle instead of blowing it, and then you have nothing, and then you're like screwed, basically.
And I was just looking, because there was an NFL player that did that. Like, I didn't show you. There's always the examples of the people who blow all their money, right? They have nothing. But this was I'm almost positive it was NFL. Was it JJ?
I think JJ Watts. He
lived very, very reasonably. And then he ended up doing like these financial like boot camps for NFL players. Because, you know, these kids are coming into all this money, not knowing what to do with it at all. And it's very true. Like we people say, well, if I only had more money, then everything would be better. And in certain situations, if you actually know what you're doing with your money, that would make sense. But if you can't, if you dug yourself a hole with your current money, what more money will often do is allow yourself to kind of dig a bigger hole, you know. And you kind of brought up the lottery winners, and I would like to pull up those the stories of, man, these people who are winning like $100 million and just wrecking their lives, like wrecking them, because you need that kind of financial understanding of just these little simple principles of, if you spend less than you earn, that little gap provides you a degree of freedom. Now, obviously, you can then take that and grow it so that what you earn becomes the passive income that makes that gap even bigger. But it's such a simple concept that so few, well, I'm saying not few, a lot of people listen, it's like, oh, I totally understand that. But there's a lot of people who don't. and then there's the physicians that go out and, I mean, we were stupid and we bought a house when I finished fellowship. That was like the stupidest financial thing we ever did. I mean, it was so dumb. And I'll never forget the first real estate broker who we talked to, who was actually recommended to me by some of the guys that were at Navy. And he's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And he's like, you're only going to be here for like 4 years. The market's kind of high. That's not a bad thing. And that was a very expensive education, because of course I'm like, I knew better. And then we went and found, because you will always find someone who's gonna sell you something. And we found a new broker who I thought was really nice, and she probably was really nice, but we bought this house and it was horrible financial and horrible. I mean, without a doubt, the worst financial thing that we ever did.
Yeah.
Sort of like surgery. Like if you have something wrong, you find the surgeon who doesn't want to operate on you and listen to them, versus, "I came in here to get this fixed and you're saying I don't need surgery. You're wrong." You will find a surgeon who will operate on you.
Yes.
You probably should have listened to the first one.
Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure. I was just looking at, I think it was JJ Watts, but I know there's a football player that basically what they live on just their what they make as on one side or the other, like everything they make in endorsement stuff, they don't touch the money. Like that is like reserved. And then their salary, that's what they use to live, or, maybe a portion of it. I don't know. But it's a very intentional way to minimize, like basically, siphoning out your entire checking account. And so it just, I don't know. I don't want to give, credit to JJ Watts, but I know that there's one of the football players that is very, very open about that.
Yeah. Didn't buy like the new sports car, didn't buy the house, like 4 houses or whatever. It was just, it was, and there may be more than one. I'm sure that at this point there's more than one. With the internet, they should be able to figure this stuff out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But what is, this whole thing where people think it's an income problem really comes down to thinking. It's a thinking problem. Almost all problems end up ultimately to be a thinking problem.
It always comes from there. I mean, how do you make choices? It's coming from this thing up here, which is, part of the change position about the challenges of life and how we, respond, how we act, and how we check ourselves and all the good stuff. But I'm always having to check myself on the freedom gap too. That you keep thinking, how is it that you just kind of like inch up, you just keep inching up. The more you make, you're like, oh, I want this, I can have this, I can get this, I'm going to get this. You get yourself into what? Why? Like I lived on this before. So yeah,
we did the episode on wants versus needs, didn't we?
Yeah.
We do that. Yeah. So that's the second part, right? Is you understand the freedom gap. The second thing is understand the difference between wants and needs.
Yep.
And
it's so true.
Man, I was talking to my daughter actually this week about because my kids are fairly frugal. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm going to pat myself on the parenting back because I talk very often about wants versus needs in my house. Yeah. And the difference is they get money for Christmas or whatever. They tend not to spend a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Versus me, when I was growing up, holy crap, did I spend money? Like, what an idiot.
You get the money to spend it, right?
Yeah, it was just, it's so weird because you just like, okay. It was all, it's really how your mind sort of works. And if you think money is there to spend, well, guess what you're going to do? You're going to spend your money. And obviously we talked about that frugal versus cheap thing too, because you don't want to get to the other extreme where you're not spending any money at all. And your life then becomes unenjoyable. I guess that's the thing is really understanding what level provides the level of enjoyment. And if your level of enjoyment means you have to buy a new car every year and a brand new computer every year and whatever, then you kind of figure out that's when you need to work on why do I want these things so much? Why do I feel that they're in need?
Well, it's called the freedom gap, not the spending gap.
The spending gap is, that's
Well,
definitely not.
the more you spend, the less freedom you have.
Well, it's the freedom gap versus the spending pit is really what it comes down to. Because that's what, spending is digging that hole, it's like you're on a piece of ground and they give you a shovel. I'm trying to think of this analogy. How am I going to work this out? Because spending is the shovel. Then what is the earning? The dirt?
I guess. I mean, I'm just thinking that, there's this freedom gap that it gives you time freedom. And as physicians, if you want to free up your time so you're less burnt out, you're going to have to mind the freedom gap.
Always mind the gap. Always mind the gap. Just like that thing on the train stations. Mind the gap. Mind the gap.
Well, there you go. You've heard it here at the Change Physician. Well, any other metaphors or comments about the freedom gap, Kevin?
No, but I'm trying to think of that visual still with the shovel. The spending is the shovel. What's the earning?
Well, you want the hole to be filled and have plenty of dirt. So if you keep shoveling it, you're going to have to keep adding more dirt.
Yeah. Spend less or shovel less. I don't know. I'm going to figure this out because there should be a beautiful graphic.
Shovel less, fill more, or shovel less so you don't have to fill more. I don't know. All right. Well, unless Kevin wants to interrupt with any other metaphorical associations with the freedom gap, I'm Melissa Katie, the Challenge Doctor, with my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. If you don't know what the Change Physician is all about, you can go to thechangephysician.com, whether you're a physician or a physician ally, and of course, join us community there while we build a community related to improving our mindset skills, strategies to more fulfilling professional and or personal life, which is just life in general. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Take care.
Stay well, folks.